My boyfriend of 4 months decided to get back at me for staying up late with close friends by calling me while he was hanging out with his buddies. It's funny how time can feel so different depending on our emotions. Even though Ethan and I have only been dating for a short 4 months, the range of emotions we've GTM experienced makes it feel like both a blink and an eternity. He's studying architecture, and I'm immersed in graphic design at VL University, both in our second year. Our shared love for design brought us together from our very first freshman seminar. From the start, our conversations were easy and fluid, often revolving around our studies and dreams for the future. We frequently enjoyed coffee sessions, surrounded by the models and sketches from class. In those early days, our relationship felt effortless and genuine. We would spend countless nights discussing our projects and ideas, which I always found incredibly stimulating. Ethan V. Dijiji Autem's background was quite different from mine, especially his deep Catholic faith and conservative outlook, which initially intrigued me. He was candid about his past and his values, including his limited experience with relationships and his choice to mostly wait until marriage. However, as we moved into the honeymoon phase of our relationship, I began to feel the weight of our differences more sharply. The traditional views I once admired started to seem restrictive, particularly concerning intimacy and personal freedom. Ethan was very open about his conservative approach to relationships, but this openness sometimes left me feeling uneasy and doubtful about how it might impact us. The first significant challenge arose when I joined a large group project with my friends from the graphic design program. The project, named 50 Sample Shapes, aimed to create 3D models of various abstract forms, blending artistic creativity with scientific precision. As the deadline loomed, my team decided to pull an all-nighter to complete the work. Excited about the project, I shared my plans with Ethan, hoping he'd understand the commitment it required. However, his response was cooler than I had anticipated. He seemed concerned not only about the late night, but also about my deep involvement in something outside our relationship. His discomfort appeared to be rooted in his religious beliefs, making him wary of the unpredictable nature of creative projects. His reaction cast a chill between us. There was a noticeable tension in his farewell that evening, and even his hug felt forced, making me question whether our relationship, built on such different foundations, could truly endure. Despite this, I dove into the project night with both excitement and anxiety, unaware that the events of the evening would further test our relationship. The day before our planned all-nighter was a typical Thursday, filled with the usual bustle and an extra surge of creative energy that seemed to amplify as deadlines approached. I spent most of the day in the studio, fine-tuning my part of the project, my mind buzzing with adjustments and improvements. The vibrant atmosphere was contagious, with ideas bouncing around among everyone. Our workspace was a testament to weeks of hard work and chaotic creativity. I periodically checked my phone, noting the absence of any messages from Ethan, which was unusual since we often exchanged quick updates or words of encouragement throughout the day. Determined to break the silence, I sent her a text. "I know I've had a hard day, but I'm really looking forward to tonight. Wish me luck," I wrote, hoping the smiley face would make her smile. Her reply came just as I was leaving the studio for a light dinner before the big night. Not a single expression gave a clue about his mood. "I would love to talk to you when you have time." I felt a small wave of apprehension at the brevity and tone of his email. It wasn't the kind of message I was expecting, especially for tonight. I thought about Ethan's message as I ate alone in a nearby Caf GC with a sandwich and a strong cup of coffee. The Caf GC was a cozy little nook where I could escape the hustle and bustle of the university, but the warmth of the Caf GC today did little to alleviate the chill that had settled over me. When I returned to my apartment, Ethan was waiting for me. Ethan was leaning against the door of the small communal living room, looking tense and gloomy in a way I hadn't seen in days. "Hey, you're early today," I said, trying to sound cheerful. Ethan nodded, his eyes following me as I put my bag down and took off my jacket. "I need to talk to you about the project tonight," he began in a calm voice. "I don't understand why you have to spend all night working on a project, especially with your friends. It's not just about the project." His words hit me hard and matched the deep distrust growing between us. "It's just a project, Ethan. It's important for my class, and you know what that means. We all make a special effort to make sure everything is perfect in the end," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. Ethan crossed his arms and raised his eyebrows a little. "It's always about the project, isn't it? I feel like you're doing a lot of things without me and abandoning me. I feel like you don't want me around today." I sighed, feeling the weight of his words and the emptiness they represented. "It's not that I don't want you around, Ethan. I need you for my degree. For my degree, for me." He looked away, his expression hardening. I understand. It's just hard sometimes. There was a sadness in his voice that reminded me of simpler times when our main concern was what movie to watch on Saturday night and what dessert to eat together. Now, standing in the twilight of our living room, those days seemed like a distant echo, overshadowed by the complexity of our relationship. I miss them too, I admitted softly. In the silence that followed, the distance between us grew closer. The topic was temporarily set aside and dinner ended in an uneasy truce, but the tension remained like a stubborn fog as I packed my bag and turned to leave. Ethan's voice stopped me at the door. I'll do it, I promise, I replied, offering him only a sliver of hope and a smile, and stepped out into the cool evening air later that night. The excitement of the project was still there, but now mixed with anxiety and longing for a relationship I didn't yet know how to live with. Project night was a race against time, an intense mix of creativity and chaos. My friend and I had reserved a study room in the library, which is usually used for late-night studying and collaborative projects. When we arrived around 8 p.m., we found a familiar excitement and nervous energy mixed with laptops, documents, and 3D materials scattered on tables. The first few hours flew by as I immersed myself in the work. Anna, a meticulous planner, coordinated our efforts and made sure everyone completed their tasks. John, the eternal perfectionist, focused on adjusting the lighting for the 3D model, creating perfect shadows, and making the figure look almost realistic. My job was to integrate the background images I had designed to complete the overall project. I sent Ethan a message. Have a relaxing evening. I didn't get an immediate reply, which worried me a little, but I soon turned my attention back to the lively discussion of color schemes and textures around us. As midnight approached, we took a short coffee break. The library's 24-hour CAFGC was similarly full of students burning the midnight oil, and the air was filled with the smell of coffee. There was no message from Ethan. A wave of anxiety swept over me, but I soon rejoined my friends, who were now discussing the latest episode of their popular design reality show. By 2 a.m., the project was starting to take shape, but I was exhausted from the energy drinks and the adrenaline rush of approaching the finish line. I sent Ethan another text. I'm still at work. Almost immediately there was a reading, but no reply, just silence and a silent nod in my direction. We were in the final stages, putting the finishing touches to the project. The room was quiet, the excitement of the previous days had given way to concentration, and there was the occasional yawn. I sent Ethan one last update, hoping he would respond with words of encouragement, or at least appreciation for my efforts. Almost done. Can't wait to see the finished product. Love you. This time there was no reply. I felt nauseous and even more excited. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, and the worry lines between my eyebrows glinted in the light. At around 5:30 a.m., we finally completed the project. The visually stunning presentation of geometric and organic shapes was a testament to our hard work and spirit of sharing. With a mixed sigh of relief and pride, we packed our bags. Despite the success of the event, my heart was not in a celebratory mood. A missed text from Ethan cast a shadow over my mood. As the sun began to rise and the sky took on shades of orange and pink, I returned home. The apartment was quiet. Ethan's bed was untouched, which meant he wasn't asleep. On the kitchen table was a note from Ethan. I'm going to clear my head and we'll talk when I get back. The note was not his usual heartfelt message and did little to ease the knot of worry that had lingered in my stomach all night. The words were so harsh and lacked his usual warmth that I felt as if a cold draft of air was passing through the room. It was not like him to leave such a note. As I sat on the edge of my bed, I felt the burden of unresolved conflicts waiting for me. The joy of completing our project was mixed with a sadness that had become all too familiar lately, and I remembered how far Ethan and I had drifted in a short time. As I waited for Ethan's return, the excitement of that night was overshadowed by the uncertainty of the conversation that awaited us. Ethan returned late that night. The sound of the front door slamming signaled that a confrontation was imminent. I could hear the muffled sounds of movement as he hung up his jacket and placed his keys on the plate by the front door, each sound echoing faintly in the tense silence of our apartment, creating an atmosphere of anticipation for the difficult conversation about to begin. I stared absent-mindedly out the window at the cityscape, dreading his return. When he came in, his expression was unreadable, like a mask hiding the emotions he harbored in his absence. He stopped at the door of the room, stiffened his posture, and slowly walked over to where I was sitting. You have been working on your project all night, he said. It was for my final project, Ethan. You know how important it is for my grade, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite my fatigue and mental stress. It's not something I can put off. Ethan shook his head sarcastically and walked a few steps before turning back to me. All night? All night? You could have done this at home, right? Why did this have to go on all night? Ethan's doubts pierced through me, and I could feel myself putting up emotional barriers. It wasn't just me. The entire group was working together to get everything done. It wasn't something I could control. We were all relying on each other, I explained, hoping he'd understand. He still looked unconvinced, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. It just doesn't make sense to me. You left without even calling to check on me. How am I supposed to trust you? With each word, the room felt smaller and smaller. Exhaustion from the sleepless night and the project's demands weighed heavily on me. I'm telling you the truth, Ethan. I was too busy to call, but I texted you several times and you didn't respond. He let out a long sigh, filled with disappointment and disbelief. I don't know, it just doesn't sit right. Something feels off. Our conversation spiraled into a recounting of old wounds and misunderstandings, our voices rising and falling in a familiar pattern of conflict. Despite my attempts to explain the importance of the all-nighter, Ethan remained skeptical, and his trust seemed to dwindle with each passing moment. As the discussion dragged on, I felt a deep weariness, DJ, not just from lack of sleep, but from constantly having to defend my actions and intentions. It was draining to have to justify my commitment to both my education and our relationship. As the daylight began to fade, so did my energy. Finally, I stood up, signaling an end to our heated exchange. I need to rest, Ethan, I said softly, the fight gone from my voice. I turned and headed to our bedroom, leaving Ethan in the living room, enveloped by the silence that filled the space I had just left. As I closed the bedroom door, the unresolved tension remained like a ghost in our home. I sought refuge from the chaos in a few hours of much-needed sleep, hoping for a peaceful morning after the stressful night. But the sudden ringing of my phone shattered the calm of the apartment. Given the time and our tense messages from the day before, I braced myself for a difficult conversation, yet I was still unprepared for what was to come. As the gentle colors of dawn broke through the night, I hoped for tranquility, but the sharp ringing of my phone cut through the silence, startling me. It was Ethan. Given the time and the tense messages we had exchanged the night before, I was bracing myself for a difficult conversation. But nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen as the soft hues of dawn broke through the night. Hello? My voice was thick with sleep and anxiety. The sounds that greeted my ears weren't words but moans, VGJ, the clear, unmistakable sounds of intimacy. My mind raced as I tried to process the audio assault. Confusion quickly gave way to a terrifying realization when Ethan's voice broke through the line, breathless and harsh. I wanted you to hear what you missed, he said sharply, his whisper mingling with the background noises that made it clear he wasn't alone. The shock hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air out of my lungs. My hand trembled as I held the phone, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger, pain, and disbelief. How could the man I loved subject me to such a deliberate act of humiliation and cruelty? There was a pause, a soft shuffle, then Ethan's voice again, colder this time. Maybe now you'll understand what it's like to feel unwanted, he said, before the line went dead, and the phone slipped from my numb fingers. The phone clattered onto the parquet floor as I stood there, frozen, the echo of his words reverberating in my head. Each syllable felt like a shard of glass piercing my heart, the pain sharp and deep, the betrayal cutting to my core. Tears poured hot and uncontrollable as I sank to the floor, the room swirling around me with dark thoughts and unanswered questions about who this woman was and why Ethan chose such a destructive way to express his pain. In shock, I called Anna, who immediately rushed over to my apartment. She hurried into my room, her hands gently lifting my chin as I met her concerned gaze. What happened? Oh my God, are you okay? Her voice was full of worry, her eyes searching for an explanation. I shook my head, the words stuck in my throat as I sobbed uncontrollably. Anna listened in silence, her arm around my shoulders in a reassuring way. It's not just about tonight, is it? She whispered after I finished, her voice soft but confident. There's more pain here than just this moment. She was right. This incident was not an isolated event, but the culmination of long-standing tension and unspoken resentment that had been building up between Ethan and me. It was the turning point of something that had been slowly and painfully deteriorating for a long time. Anna stayed with me, offering silent support as I began to process the implications of what had happened and tried to overcome the initial shock. Ethan not only betrayed our trust in the most intimate way, but also used his actions as a weapon to hurt me deeply. We need to talk about you and him, not just the two of us, Anna finally said bluntly. This was very serious, very painful. Anna was right. I was afraid of confrontation, but I knew it was necessary. The foundations of our relationship had been shaken, perhaps irrevocably. With Anna's support, I found the strength to call Ethan later that day. My voice was harsher than I felt and backed by my conviction that I deserved better than the cruelty Ethan had shown me. "Ethan, I need to talk to you," I began. "What you did to me this morning was excruciatingly painful. It was devastating." There was a heavy silence on the other end of the phone until Ethan answered. His voice was weak and not as sharp as before. For a moment, I thought I heard regret in his tone. I was angry, hurt, and I didn't know how to express it, so I did. "Ethan, hurting me by letting someone else tell your story is not the way to solve anything. It will only cause more pain," I continued. "I know," he repeated more quietly. "I wasn't thinking anything. I just felt disconnected from you. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm sorry." His apology was a start, but the road to recovery seemed long and full of potential setbacks. Our trust was deeply shaken, and a full recovery seemed unlikely. After my phone call with Ethan, I retreated to the safety of my bedroom, where the four walls felt like a sanctuary from the chaos and emotional turmoil of the living room. As I lay in bed, I couldn't escape the image of Ethan's face distorted with blame and disbelief, and the deep sadness that overtook me. My mind was spinning in circles, thinking about the spiral of our deteriorating relationship. It was one tension and misunderstanding after another. In the early years with Ethan, every moment was filled with laughter and spontaneity. This contrasted with the current reality, where there were few smiles, and silence was filled with anxiety. It wasn't just a lack of trust or the painful confrontation that morning. He had become a stranger who could hurt me with calculated indifference. As I lay exhausted and hopeless on my bed, my cell phone rang with an incoming message. Reluctantly, I checked it to find a message from Anna and a missed call from her sister Leah. I called Leah, seeking comfort in her familiar voice. "Hi, Leah," I began, my voice shaking. "What's wrong? I knew something was wrong from your message." Leah listened quietly as I told her the hurtful things I had said to Ethan. When I finished, there was a heavy pause. "That's cruel. It's beneath you to put up with that kind of behavior," Leah finally said. It showed how far I had come from my old self, who valued self-respect and understanding in relationships above all else. "I don't even know who he is anymore. I can't go on like this. I can't go on like this." "Leah, this is not healthy. You deserve better. Not just for the relationship, but for yourself." His words stirred something in me. They evoked a vague determination in the midst of confusion, a call to reclaim a part of myself that I had neglected in my efforts to save our shaken relationship. I needed to think about what I really wanted instead of being driven by Ethan's moods and accusations. That evening, I had coffee with Anna. As always, she was there to help me break through the noise and see things more clearly. Over coffee, Anna told me everything. "You know you are not yourself anymore. You're always tense and you're always worried trying to understand Ethan's feelings. When was the last time you did something just for yourself?" His question was sharp, challenging, and hovering. I had no answer, which in itself was an indication of how much I had changed. Maybe I saw a side of him that he had been hiding all along. Anna's brow furrowed in thought. "But more importantly, what are you going to do about it?" That was the real question. But to end it, to step into the unknown after everything we had been through, was terrifying. Over the next few days, I spent a lot of time alone thinking about my values, my needs, and my future. I thought about the kind of love I wanted, the kind that would bring respect and joy. It became clear that what Ethan and I had now was far from these ideals. Our love was tainted with hurt and pain, and far from the partnership I had imagined. I realized that it was better to move forward on my own than to stay in a relationship that didn't make me happy. It wasn't just about finding happiness. It was about preserving my self-esteem and rediscovering the strength I had before my relationship swallowed me up. It was time to end my relationship with Ethan. I needed to express my decision with honesty and self-respect, not anger or resentment. I hoped Ethan would understand my choice and my need for it. The decision to end the relationship was not easy, but it was necessary. Although difficult, it was a step towards healing and a return to the joy and peace that had once defined my life. As I prepared to talk to Ethan one last time, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for all that we had lost, and relief that we were finally stepping out of the shadow of our love and into a future where we could be ourselves again. The ending was predictably painful, but underneath the pain was an unwavering determination. I clearly expressed my needs and the sadness of a relationship that had strayed too far from happiness and mutual respect. Ethan's reaction as he listened to me was a mixture of resignation and silent acceptance. He was clearly sad and regretful, but he finally understood and accepted my choice. In the weeks that followed, I felt a sudden relief, but also a deep sense of loneliness. Our apartment, once filled with shared dreams, was now quiet. I spent a long night thinking about what had gone wrong and recalling sweet and bitter memories. This introspection was painful but necessary for my healing process. Gradually, the sharpness of my recent wounds gave me a deeper understanding of myself and my limitations. I began to reconnect with old friends and family, and these somewhat neglected relationships became a source of comfort and joy. Their support played an important role in helping me regain my self-confidence, which had been shattered by my efforts to save a failed relationship. The lessons I learned during this period, even at great cost, were invaluable. I learned the importance of being honest and open with both myself and my partner. I realized the danger of compromising too much and losing yourself in trying to make someone happy. I promised myself to prioritize emotional fulfillment and mutual respect over fear of loneliness in any relationship. As I move forward, the scars of these experiences still remain, but they are a testament to my resilience. They remind me that I have the strength to face hard truths and make difficult decisions, and that I deserve to be loved completely and unconditionally. As my journey back to the joy and peace I once knew continues, I now walk with a clearer vision of who I am and what is truly important in life and love. I am grateful to all of you who have listened and read my story. I have removed it from other platforms as I don't think the details of what happened should reflect badly on my account. This page is the only place I want to share my story. Please leave a comment after reading it so I can see what others think. I'm sure I will read it a few times myself. Thank you for staying with me until I get it off my chest.